Thank you, Allison, and a big thanks and congratulations to our Global 2023 E3 Grant Award winners. We've posted a list of all the grant recipients on our website, along with that fun little highlight reel, and we can't wait to see how this year's projects progress. Up next, we have our third keynote of the day, and I'm really excited for you to meet Diya Wynn from Amazon Web Services, otherwise known as AWS. As we said earlier, AI is on top of everyone's agenda and on everyone's mind these days in terms of what the technology can do. But a couple of years ago, we saw a need to make sure that we were also prepared to address these questions of the why and how we do it. So we have set ourselves up with groups like AWS to help us move forward quickly and rapidly with the market, responsibly, ethically, and equitably. As an EdTech enthusiast with an entrepreneurial spirit, Diya conceived, pitched, and is now leading the entire department at AWS who engages with customers to identify and then operationalize standards for responsible artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data. AWS is a great Echo 360 partner, and they are helping us in that regard as well. And I'm so glad that all of you now get a chance to hear from Diya and Amazon Web Services who is their Senior Practice Manager for Responsible AI. Once again, I'd love to introduce Diya Wynn.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I guess, depending on where you are joining us from around the world. I'm delighted to be here to share with you. And let me share why, a few reasons why, so that you have a context for me and my introduction. The first is I come from a family of educators. So in some ways, even though I thought I would never teach, I'm a little bit at home. The second reason is because my impetus or shift in my career into responsible and trustworthy AI was because of a concern that I had for my two sons as they are in education or in school, really wanting to make sure that we were doing all the things that would help prepare them for how they would engage in the world and the workforce of tomorrow. And in some ways, we can question whether or not education was ready and equipped to be able to provide them everything they needed. And the third, of course, is because AI is being used in almost every industry, including education. It's important to be able to plan, strategize, and be intentional. And I heard someone earlier say intentional design. Be intentional about the way that AI is being employed to ensure that we're building inclusively and responsibly. So it's for those reasons that I'm excited to be here today with you all and to be able to share a bit about how we look at responsible AI and why it's so important in the context of education, and certainly as we continue to see innovation and the emerging space of technology and education combined. So education is in the midst of a transformation probably like never before. We see a world where education is going to be always available, personalized, and an opportunity for lifelong learning for everyone. And that's part of our mission at AWS, to be able to accelerate the transformation of education in partnership with the educational community, including learners, educators, researchers, and technology providers. So education is an open and distributed sector that is on the cusp of change and in the midst of modernization and reskilling. This transition is fueled by this rapid innovation and changing market. Online learning is expanding rapidly, and there's a huge array of opportunities for programs and offerings that students and lifelong learners will be engaged in. Educational institutions are also under a bit of pressure to continue to deliver on their mission, as well as being able to improve student outcomes in the face of increased competition and decreasing budgets. And so AI and machine learning are helping educations adjust to these headwinds and be able to thrive in this market. So this transformation is being fueled by a variety of challenges, such as increasing costs and the emergence of new methods of learning, the continued rise of student debt, and the expectation of digital learners. The results are the trends in adoption are meaning that emerging technology is present to be able to meet those challenges head on. Institutions are using the cloud in unprecedented ways, and you were hearing some of those examples earlier that help to improve the student and faculty experience with voice technology, or drastically improving research with AI ML, and bringing newfound digital equity to the classroom with different mediums to be able to engage students, innovation centers to bring students and faculty to solve social issues in computing are all ways that we see and have been supporting education institutions. Education is progressing and shifting towards more digital content and channels, and learning content and platforms are merging to deliver personalized learning and adaptive learning experiences. And so it's no surprise that artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities are actually at the core or the center of those advancements. Now, we're also seeing places where the technology companies or education technology companies are being able to make their content more valuable by being able to classify and optimize the content to make it easier to find, access, use, and automate repetitive tasks in publishing or content delivery workflows, and in some ways reducing operational costs and creating new learning and digital experiences. Lastly, with many of our customers, they're just starting on the machine learning journey. And so over time, they've been calculating or capturing tons of data and building and beginning to build a foundation of that data and the capacity for artificial intelligence and machine learning so that they can leverage more insights from that data, generate predictions, and hopefully improve student outcomes. These trends are underscored by these comments from institutions that we've worked with. And I'm sure you all have seen, like during the COVID pandemic, there was a drastic move, in part because of the isolation, to require ways or new ways to be able to continue to provide access to education and the absence of the ability to meet in person. A recent study showed that 43% of institutions have improved their digital position over the last 3 years. And this drive or energy hasn't stopped and hasn't slowed, especially in the context of new and emerging areas of technology like the conversation around generative AI or ChatGPT. In particular, that transformation is being powered by AI and machine learning. So I wanted to start with just talking about that before we jumped into some of the other areas of generative AI. Some of the challenges that AI and machine learning are being used to solve in education. And while this slide doesn't cover every case, it shows a lot of the major areas where we've been working with customers to help them take advantage of the power of AI and ML. So one of the first areas is in marketing and recruiting and enrollment. Machine learning is being used for a number of years in the commercial sector to help identify customers and to target them more effectively to increase their return on investments from marketing and advertisement. You can now take those same approaches and apply them in higher education, where institutions are having to work extremely hard to compete for students. Machine learning can help identify which types of prospective students are a good fit and most likely to enroll with a particular institution. And it's helping to personalize the way in which those institutions are reaching out to prospective students in the way that maximizes their level of engagement. Lastly, machine learning is really good at certain types of forecasting problems, and often in higher education, forecasting things like admissions and enrollment or course capacity is one that ML can be powerful in assisting. Now, I've already mentioned briefly about learning content and personalization. There are areas where this can provide extreme benefit, especially in the context of students that are needing to learn in other ways, to be able to improve accessibility of the content, or to be able to provide content in different languages, or just to meet the different needs of the ways in which students may learn. And this, of course, is going to be a game changer as far as being able to help improve their educational outcomes. Now, generative AI has taken the world by storm because we've been able to, through customer-facing applications like ChatGPT, experience the powerful ways that machine learning has been evolving. Now, there should be a poll. Well, actually, no, there's not a poll, because right before there was a question already asked about your engagement in generative AI. But one of the things that I want to distinguish is because most people, when they start talking about generative AI, are talking about ChatGPT. And that's been the experience over the course of the last several months that people have been most engaging in, is trying to think about the ways in which they might use ChatGPT. But generative AI is so much more than that. ChatGPT is just one application, and there is so much more in the way of content that can be created, ideas, conversation, stories, images, videos, and music that would be generated from a model. And these models powered by large amounts of data that are commonly referred to foundation models. Now, it's not magic, and you heard a little bit of the explanation around generative AI earlier. Generative AI is leveraging some of the latest advancements in machine learning. And what makes foundation models special is that they can perform so many more tasks because they contain a large number of parameters that make them capable of learning complex concepts. And through their pre-training and the internet scale data in all of its various forms, it can then apply that learning and knowledge in different contexts. Like the broad ways in which we've seen ChatGPT be able to respond to questions or prompts from different subjects or disciplines, whether it's history or politics or other. While the capabilities and resulting possibilities of foundation models are amazing, customers are really excited because these generally capable models can perform tasks that they hadn't imagined. And the potential for generative AI is really exciting, not just in other contexts, but in education as well. These foundation models and generative AI are in their early stages. And of course, we all have been excited, and the first experiences probably that most have had with generative AI was ChatGPT. But there's so much more that is possible. And as we've seen with fast-moving technologies and the evolution of AI, things are changing rapidly. And so we expect that new architectures are going to arise in the future, and that this wave of technology, this wave of innovation will open up new opportunities, new areas of productivity. And generative AI has the potential to bring around sweeping changes, not just to the global economy, but also to specific industries and interrupt it. So this global market insights was suggesting that by this year, that there would be some 86% of educators that are convinced that AI and technology would play a paramount role in the future of teaching for generations. And by 2027, they're saying that 60%, this was Gartner, saying 60% of higher education institutions would adopt a hybrid operating model that blends physical and virtual capabilities that include the cloud, AI, and other emerging areas of tech. So these are some of the areas of opportunity. When we start looking at this transformation, the new ways in which AI can alter or adjust, transform, revolutionize education, these are some of the enhanced technologies that we see that generative can also provide. Enhancing personalization, going beyond just this personalized but adaptive learning opportunities, where students and their courses can be improved. They can get better customer service, answers to questions, and additional support. We heard a little bit earlier about opportunities to have more customized tutoring that helps students improve their weaknesses and sharpen their skills. The technology can ensure that there are quick responses to the students' requests and enhances the opportunity to have content available 24/7 or learning available 24/7. In addition, educators can use AI for task automation and bring about optimization in areas of administrative work, evaluating learning paths, grading papers, and responding to general queries. Online learning is expected to increase retention up to 6 times and is expected to be 40 to 60% faster with advancements in an AI and generative AI to come. And this was quoted by the World Economic Forum. So all of these become ways in which we can see better aids, adaptive support, customized data-based feedback and improvement to the learning experience. Now, I mentioned that I was a mother of 2 sons, so oftentimes you'll find in some of my presentations there are some references to superheroes, and what better place to pull from Spider-Man. Now, I know he's not the one that originally said this, but this statement seems to be so appropriate. With great possibility, with great power, there is great responsibility. We have this great opportunity, but there are some very real risks. We firmly believe that the way we leverage these technologies should respect the rule of law, ensure that human rights and dignity are being maintained, and that these systems and their outcomes aligned with our shared values of inclusiveness, privacy, and fairness. That's the position that we take as we help our customers tackle and address this challenge, wanting to leverage the technology more, but realizing there is real risk. So have you seen any of these articles? ChatGPT is a plague upon education. How ChatGPT and similar AI will disrupt education. I'm sure you've seen and read a number of these articles with similar themes. So the question I have for you now is, are these articles real or overblown? And hopefully you all are taking the time to respond. So I'm seeing most people think they're valid, a little bit over half. Addressing responsible AI concerns in education is crucial to ensure the ethical and effective use of generative AI or any other emerging technology as well. And it's important to engage in open discussions like what's happening here today, involving various stakeholders, including educators, policymakers, students, and AI experts to collectively develop responsible AI practices tailored to the unique needs of the education sector. So we were talking about some of the challenges. Generative AI has stoked some legitimate enthusiasm, and there are some very legitimate fears as well. In addition to the usual concerns of responsible AI, it becomes more difficult for generative AI. Generative gives a rise to new challenges that simply don't exist for traditional or predictive models that have a much more narrow focus. So questions like toxicity, and a primary concern with generative AI is the possibility of generating content, whether it be text or images, that is offensive, disturbing, or otherwise inappropriate. Hallucinations, considering the next word distribution that is employed by large language models, it's probably not surprising that in many cases there can be cases where there are hallucinations, where the system will assert that there are claims that are somewhat plausible but are verifiably incorrect. Then, of course, we have the questions of intellectual property, a problem where early large language models and their tendency to occasionally produce text or a code or some other passage may be taking portions of that verbatim or regurgitating part of that, and that will raise privacy concerns or copyright concerns. Of course, in the context of education, and we saw this in one of the articles, this question of plagiarism or cheating. The creative capabilities of generative AI is something that most people want to take advantage of, even our students, and are looking at ways in which they can write their college essays or other samples, and that might be a form of cheating and require us to reconsider what we call plagiarism. And disruption of work. So AI is, of course, becoming proficient, and it's going to be able to create and perform well in certain cases, write articles, summarize content. And that may have an effect on how we work and how we engage, but also on the workers themselves. Now, to address some of these concerns or considerations so that we have the ability or the power of AI at our disposal, we can't just think of responsible AI as a technology problem alone. It's a multidisciplinary problem that requires us to look across multiple teams and disciplines. It involves economics and moral philosophy, law, and social science. Sometimes these skills that aren't commonly considered when we're building technology and may not be present in enterprises, but that's why the collaboration and the work of other institutions and entities becomes even more important. So this is the way that I like to think about responsible AI. That it's more than just a technology solution, that it requires bringing in an operating model, as we mentioned earlier, that takes into consideration not just the technology or tools that may be employed, but is also looking at the effects on people and the adjustment that needs to be made with people and process as well. It's not just about defining principles or having policies, but looking at ways to reduce the areas of risk, the potential for unintended impact, and maximize the benefit and outcomes for all. So this is one of the ways that we think about this, like not just that these are, it's just an operating model. An operating model in many ways requires that there is a cultural change or shift that's necessary to be able to enable the organization in ways to be thinking about responsible AI as a part of the way in which they build, the way they would build products, but also the way in which you might employ or purchase others as well. You need to be supporting a new way of thinking that isn't just top down, but also bottom up, and keeping people at the center. This holistic approach combined with technology is what we believe will actually help in enabling us to reduce some of the areas of risk, as well as be able to maximize its benefit in education, and well as all the other areas we see AI being used today. It's not just something for a data scientist or a technical individual as well, but all throughout the product life cycle, all throughout the institution, a general understanding and awareness of the ways in which AI is being used and where there are potential for risk, so that can be a part of the decision-making culture, needs to be embraced. Now, what I'd like to walk through in some of the remaining minutes, is to actually talk through some of the pillars, what I call core areas that organizations need to be thinking about as they look at either designing or building products, leveraging AI, or looking at products or procuring products that they bring into the organization. Some of these same questions still remain. And while I won't talk about all of them, there are a few that I think are important, and I'm going to focus on the people and process areas in particular. This question of value alignment is one that's important, because there are often times where we see technology, and instead of looking at it as a tool that can help enable our outcomes, we focus on the tool, and we want to put it everywhere. And it might mean that we need to evaluate or consider where it's best appropriate to, best used, where it's most appropriate to be employed. We need to look at that in the context of other sort of legal considerations or standards that might be applicable. And certainly right now there are some law that is proposed, but not as much in the way. And so the standard or the principle and mission, vision, social norms, mission, vision, values of the organization need to be what sort of drive alignment of our use in AI. So it may not be good for us to employ technology in a certain place where we recognize that we may not be able to meet the needs of our learners who have accessibility requirements that may not be fulfilled. Perhaps that's one of the ways we think about not or consider other things to employ or better ways in which to build if we can't meet the need of that customer or that consumer. Inclusion is another area that's important. And we say this often, how much inclusion matters. It helps elevate the cognitive intelligence of the teams, but it also helps improve the outcomes from a business perspective of companies. But it's important for us to think about, even in the context of the way in which we build our systems or employ our solutions. Are we thinking about all of the students, all of the consumers, all of the customers that might be impacted or affected? And if we're not, or how do we then include those personas as part of our design? So oftentimes we'll think about not just identifying student personas or personas, but also answer personas, the ones that we intend not to meet, to uncover other areas of potential impact. And then the other around inclusion is important because we have to recognize that bringing in the voice and perspective of our customers, like those that may be from different sexual preferences or have different accessibility needs or learning needs, make a difference. Bringing in that voice and perspective makes a difference in terms of the way in which we design. Now, training and education is important because, as I mentioned before, we often don't think about how much everyone needs to be informed about the way in which AI is being used and the potential risks. So we might resign that education or awareness, the knowledge of looking for bias, just to our technical team. But our product managers need to know as well. Our testers need to be informed. And that's one of the ways in which they will be better able to be accountable to ensuring that we have the right sort of controls, or that we're testing appropriately, or even that we know where AI has greater risk and how much human oversight is needed in some of our areas of decisions or choices. The other areas of this framework, I'm not going to go into detail, but these are the more technical ones where we think about the privacy of our data and ensuring that we have ways to ensure safety and security of the infrastructure and the data. Ensuring that there are technical solutions or ways in which to look at bias or even testing from that. And one of the things that I'll mention in the context of just fairness is just making sure that we actually define what is fair. That's something that becomes part of the intentional work that you do in design as you're thinking about the solution, or even when you're looking to purchase a product. What would be a fair outcome or a fair result in terms of our student learners or others that might be engaged, to make sure that we're meeting the needs, again, of all of those stakeholders that we defined or personas that were defined earlier in the process. And then transparency and explainability. And some of these are going to become more important to us because some of the regulation is going to require that we have more visibility when we are engaging with AI or when AI is driving decisions. But all of this framework, we believe, gives the right sort of context for customers to begin to understand where there are areas of risk, think about where those areas of risk, put in place the right kind of processes, educate and equip our teams appropriately so that we can do better in terms of building inclusively and responsibly. Now that sounds like a lot, I'm sure. And I often get from customers this huge sort of concern about how much now they have to do or infuse into their process. And I'd like to remind folks that it's a journey. There's no company or customer that has ticked every box as far as responsible AI is concerned. This is a fairly new area of concern, a new area of discipline, and there's still much being done in the way of research and unpacking some of the challenges, and in particular those around generative AI. But you have an opportunity to start now. Some of that starting place means that on the journey, we start off with building awareness, with just helping to educate, using our training and education internally to help equip our teams so that they understand, they can ask the right questions in their design, that can be filtered into the way in which they test, can have a better outcome at the end. And the intent is along the way, you establish additional practices, you put in more automation, that it becomes integral into the way in which you work. That there's no product that's bought without considering your vendors and the way in which they're building responsibly, and certainly nothing that you build that you haven't taken into consideration what you've defined as responsible and ethical principles or guidelines. All of this helps build trust, and not just trust in the products that you build or the products that you use or your institution, but also in the technology and the industry as well. And that trust is foundational or important because that trust is what's going to open the doors and give way for us to be able to leverage this technology in ways that will continue to tap into and address some of the challenges or bring new opportunities and innovations to bear. So I said it's a journey. And what would an educational session be if I didn't give you all homework? So the intent is that you can do things now. The initial start about building awareness and building the foundation is continuing to do things like this, engaging in opportunities to learn more, to understand more about ways in which you can be responsible and bring that practice into your organization. Find ways in which you can educate your organization. And there's so much in the way of resources. We have a Responsible AI webpage, but there are so many others as well that can use in the way of education and training to equip your teams so that they're thinking about this too. Think about where AI fits, where you're using it in the organization. Come up with your own set of guidelines in terms of what would be responsible trustworthy, ethical use that makes a difference for your students, for other participants, other learners, and certainly your organization. Consider the risks. Are we thinking about all of those people, all of those consumers that need to be engaged? Have we protected their data? Is their data sensitive? What might happen when bias occurs? And prioritize inclusion. And sometimes that means that you bring in the voices or perspectives of others through advisory groups, customer boards, and even some of your diversity and inclusion leaders. I hope that this was a good starting point in beginning to give you a context for why responsible AI, why responsible use is so important. We are at a great inflection point with generative AI opening the door to so much in the way of opportunities and ways in which that can have great benefit for our students and the education sector alone. We don't want to be like it was a number of years ago when graphing calculators, for instance, were introduced into the classrooms, or when we started to embrace the internet even more. These are tools, and ones that we know that the workforce and our students, our children, all of us are going to interact and engage with every day. This augmented workforce we need to be prepared for. So embracing technology and allowing it to bring us more into a better world is what we want to be able to do. But we've got to be able to do that responsibly. So I hope you'll take in the charge and build responsibly too. Thank you.